My stepdaughter openly called me Mr. Cash Cow at her lavish birthday dinner when she was called to acknowledge her guests. I thought it was a compliment until everyone started laughing and mocking at me. So I calmly left, but what happened next was rather unexpected. I will tell you how everything unfolded. First, let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today's special shout out goes to Sam Hill from New York. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. I sat at the end of the long table, watching the gold-trimmed glasses catch the light, listening to the clinking of cutlery and the high-pitched laughter bouncing off the marble walls. The private room at Mirabella's was packed. Her college friends, a couple of junior influencers she knew from Instagram, a few of her old high school classmates who barely made eye contact with me. My wife, Sandra, was beaming at the center of it all, dressed in an emerald dress I bought just last week. She looked proud, like she'd won something. And in a way, she had. Her daughter, Camille, was turning 21, and no expense had been spared. The chandeliers above sparkled like the diamonds I'd paid to hang from her ears. It was a beautiful scene, from a distance, the kind you see in glossy magazines. But when you're the one footing the bill and sitting in the shadows, you feel more like the furniture than the family. I wasn't there for the thanks, honestly. I'd stopped expecting it. What I wanted was something smaller, quieter, maybe a real smile from Camille that didn't feel forced. Maybe a glance of acknowledgement. I'd been in her life since she was 12. I paid for ballet classes, SAT tutors, braces, a MacBook she broke twice. I stepped in when her biological father vanished, never asking for the title of dad, just settling for being present. But presence, I've learned, doesn't mean acceptance. It just means you're nearby when people need something. The food came and went, Wagyu steaks, lobster risotto, endless champagne. I stayed mostly silent, nodding when someone made eye contact, pretending to check emails when they didn't. It wasn't until the dessert plates were cleared that Camille rose to her feet, glass in hand, phone already out to record herself. She tapped it twice and said, okay, just a quick toast before we all head out to the club. People quieted, raised their glasses. I just want to say thank you all for coming out. Like, seriously, this is wild. I feel so loved tonight. Shout out to all my girls, my ride or dies. Y'all are insane. I love you. More giggling, more clinking. Then her eyes swept over the table and landed briefly on me. And of course, she said, eyes wide with performative gratitude. Special thanks to Mr. Cash Cow over there. Laughter. Real, honest-to-God laughter. Not polite chuckles. Good punch, mocking laughter. Some guy at the far end repeated it with a hoot. Mr. Cash Cow. Another voice chimed in. Where's the move button? I blinked. Just once. Camille didn't flinch. She sipped her rose and added, I mean, we all know who made tonight possible. Sandra laughed too. Not full-blown, but enough. Enough to join the joke. Enough to not stop it. I didn't say a word. My throat tightened, and I felt something, humiliation, maybe rage, start to crawl up the back of my neck. But I didn't speak. I just slowly pushed back my chair. The screech of the legs against the marble floor drew a few glances. I didn't make a scene. Didn't throw a drink. I just stood, nodded once to no one in particular, and walked out. The valet brought the car in under 3 minutes. My hand shook slightly as I reached for the steering wheel, not from anger, but clarity. I never felt so disrespected and absurdly calm at the same time. I drove home without turning on the radio, every red light feeling like punctuation. I had one thought looping in my head. You're not a father. You're an open wallet with a face. When I got home, the silence welcomed me. No noise, no mockery, no glass clinking like coins in a tip jar. I went to my office and sat down at my desk. I opened my laptop and typed quickly. First, cancel the vehicle delivery scheduled for the next morning, the white Audi convertible I had arranged as a surprise gift. Next, log into the rent payment portal and disable autopay. Then the credit card tied to her name. Frozen. Done. I stared at the screen for a long time after. Then opened my email and wrote, Camille, effective immediately, I am no longer responsible for your living expenses, utilities, car, or lifestyle. Consider this the start of your independence. All previously promised gifts are canceled. You're welcome. T. I read it twice. No anger. No pettiness. Just facts. Then I clicked send. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Her name flashed on the screen. I ignored it. A minute later, text messages. A laughing emoji. Then another. Then, OMG chill, it was a joke followed by you mad? I turned the phone off. Sandra didn't come home until nearly midnight. I was still in the office, lights low, thinking. When she walked in, she looked like someone had just briefed her on a plane crash. What the hell did you do? She asked. Not what happened. Not are you okay? Just what did you do? I told her the truth. I told her I was done. That I wasn't mad about the money, I was mad about the mockery. That I had built a life with both of them, paid for things no man should be asked to fund without at least a modicum of respect. And that being turned into a joke by her daughter in front of strangers was my line. She stared at me like I'd grown horns. She was just being playful, she said. Playful? I asked. Is that what you call it? I felt like a clown. Her voice rose. So what? You're going to ruin her birthday over a dumb nickname? No, I said, standing up. She ruined it the second she chose laughter over gratitude. And you helped. She opened her mouth to respond but closed it. I walked past her and said, you both made your point tonight. Now I've made mine. And just like that, the house began to feel different. The next morning, the light felt different, not in a poetic, sunrise over the horizon kind of way, but in the way the air gets still after a detonation. You know it's quiet only because something loud already happened. I woke up in the guest room, the one we used to reserve for visitors, but now felt like a self-imposed exile. I didn't sleep much. The sheets were stiff from lack of use, and I could hear Sandra moving around on the other side of the house, pacing like she wanted to start another argument but didn't know how to begin it. I didn't care. My mind was already somewhere else, strategizing, finalizing. I'd spent years funding a lifestyle that treated me like a bank, not a man. That stopped today. I brewed coffee in silence, sipping it black while I stared out the window. The Audi dealership would open at 9 a.m., and I wanted to be first in line to cancel that delivery. I wasn't going to let them call and say the driver was on his way like it was some festive announcement. That car, that symbol of indulgence, would never meet our driveway. I logged into my dealership account and pulled up the order. It had Camille's name on it, a customized license plate that read CMU21. She had picked that out herself after snooping through my emails one afternoon and guessing what her surprise was. She'd even posted a hint story on her Instagram last week, just a picture of an Audi logo with the caption manifesting. That car wasn't a surprise anymore. It was an expectation, an entitlement. I clicked cancel delivery. A pop-up appeared. Are you sure you want to cancel? Your deposit will not be refunded. Yes. I clicked yes and felt nothing. It was already paid. She could have it back if she ever earned it herself. Next came the rent. I'd been paying her apartment rent directly through a landlord portal her building used. I logged in, navigated to the Payments tab, and disabled autopay. Her next rent was due in 3 days. Let it be. She was 21 now, a legal adult. Surely she could handle the complexities of living in the real world, especially since she was so eager to joke about her sugar daddy of a stepfather. I even left a note in the payment memo. Responsibility is a grown-up word. Best learn it soon. The last step was freezing her credit card. It was an extension of my own account, a gesture I'd made years ago when she wanted to build credit. Sandra said it was important for her future, that it would help her start adulthood right. I agreed, thinking it was a small investment in a long-term relationship. But instead, I watched Camille rack up expenses with no concern: designer shoes, spa days, DoorDash orders that could feed a family of 4. I deactivated the card and texted her, "Your card has been frozen. Happy adulthood." I left it at that. At 9:15, my phone buzzed. Camille. I ignored it. Then again, text this time. Why is my rent portal saying balance due? 10 minutes later, the car people just emailed me. Is this a mistake? I didn't respond. I didn't even open the texts. I wasn't trying to be petty. I was simply done. Done explaining myself. Done chasing gratitude that was never going to come. Sandra cornered me in the hallway around noon. She looked less angry than she did exhausted. Her voice had dropped a few notches overnight, from hot fury to measured panic. "You're really doing this," she said, like she couldn't believe it. "You're actually pulling everything." I looked at her and sipped my coffee. "I already did." "Why now?" she asked, genuinely confused. "All these years, and you blow it all up over a joke?" "No," I said, stepping past her. I blew it up the second I realized it was never going to change. She followed me into the office. "You know how she is. She's impulsive. She's trying to be funny. That's her defense. It doesn't mean she doesn't care." "She doesn't care," I said flatly. "She never has. And you've let her believe that was okay." Sandra looked hurt. "That's not fair." I stood up. "Fair is knowing the difference between love and utility. I've been treated like a bank with legs. And you know what the worst part is? I let it happen." She shook her head. "You're being dramatic. And you're being willfully blind," I replied, calmer than I expected. "You laughed. You laughed when she called me that in front of everyone." It was a nervous laugh. It was agreement. I snapped, then caught myself. I lowered my voice. "You didn't stop her. You never stop her." For a second, neither of us spoke. The air in the room felt thick, like it was made of wet wool. I could see the gears turning in her head, calculating the risk of pushing me further, weighing it against the comfort of maintaining the status quo. "I'll talk to her," she finally said. "You do that," I said. "But I won't pay another cent until I hear a real apology. Not a joke. Not a text with a laughing face. Real words. In person." Sandra looked like she wanted to protest, but something in my voice, or maybe my eyes, stopped her. She turned and left without another word. I sat back in my chair and exhaled, rubbing my face with both hands. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel powerful. I felt tired. Not just from the confrontation, but from the years of tolerating subtle digs, cold shoulders, transactional affection. I'd mistaken being needed for being valued. And last night ripped the mask off. My phone buzzed again that afternoon. This time, it was Camille's number, followed by a voicemail. I didn't listen. I deleted it. Then I shut off the phone and placed it face down on the desk. That night, I didn't eat dinner with them. I reheated leftovers in the guest room microwave and watched an old detective show I barely followed. Camille didn't come home. Sandra didn't knock. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was sitting in my own silence, not theirs. The storm didn't hit all at once. It arrived in pieces: phone calls, heavy knocks on the front door, the kind of awkward silences that follow a joke no one laughs at. The next morning, I was halfway through a bitter cup of coffee when I heard the doorbell ring. I didn't move. Sandra, who had been pacing the kitchen like a caged animal all morning, glanced toward the front hallway and muttered, "I'll get it." I stayed seated, listening. It was the landlord, Mr. Hollis. I think his name was ill. A short man with a clipboard and an urgent voice that carried through the walls. I couldn't make out all of it, but I heard key phrases. "No rent payment this month. Lease agreement says it's due on the 1st. She said she thought it was automatic." Sandra kept her voice low, probably hoping I wouldn't hear, but I heard enough to know Camille hadn't said anything to him. Not a warning, not a heads up. She thought I'd bluff. She thought I'd back down. When Sandra came back in, her lips were pressed into a hard line. She didn't speak to me, just poured herself a glass of water with shaky hands. I watched her, not to gloat, but to see if she understood now, if reality had finally broken through that wall of excuses she'd built around Camille for years. But there was no recognition in her eyes, only panic. By noon, Camille started calling again. This time she left messages. "Okay, seriously, what the hell? One voicemail began. "You're really gonna do this? Cut me off because of a dumb joke? That's wild. Like, I'm not even mad. I'm just shocked." Her voice had that entitled lilt, that Valley Girl tone that only came out when she didn't get her way. "Whatever. I'll figure it out. Just don't expect a Father's Day card." I almost laughed, almost. But what I felt was deeper than amusement. It was a strange blend of sadness and relief, like finally pulling a splinter you've learned to live with and realizing how long you've let yourself bleed. Sandra tried to re-engage that evening. She brought dinner to the guest room, a half-hearted peace offering of leftover chicken and a forced smile. I didn't want to be cruel, so I accepted the plate but not the conversation. She sat on the edge of the bed like she used to when we were still trying, like she wanted to pretend this was just a bump in the road. "She's embarrassed," she said finally. "She doesn't know how to say sorry." I chewed slowly, staring at the muted TV. She thinks you're punishing her, she added. That you're doing this to make a point. I am, I said, wiping my mouth. I'm making the point that I'm not a fool. She's 21, Sandra said, like that explained everything. She's immature. She's figuring it out. She's 21, I echoed. And she called me Mr. Cash Cow in front of a room full of people who laughed at me. She's not figuring it out. She's doubling down. Sandra put her face in her hands. I just wish you'd told me before cutting everything. I did tell you, I said. I told you when she broke her laptop and blamed the maid. I told you when she ran up a $700 Uber bill in a single weekend. I told you every time I tried to set a boundary, and you called me uptight. She didn't argue. She just sat there, quiet and small, like someone who'd lost something they hadn't realized was at stake. After a few minutes, she left the plate and walked out. The real unraveling started the next day. Camille's utilities were shut off first, water and Wi-Fi. Then her landlord taped a notice to the door. I know this because she came home in tears, waving it like a flag of injustice. She stormed into the house and found me in the office. What the actual hell is wrong with you? She snapped, her voice trembling more with indignation than fear. You think you're teaching me a lesson? You think this is funny? I stayed seated. You're ruining my life over a name? A joke? I was drunk. Everyone was. I looked at her, not with anger, but with a strange, heavy calm. You weren't drunk when you posted the video of the toast. Her face paled. You saw that? Everyone saw it, I said. Your followers, your friends, strangers. You made a spectacle out of me. It wasn't that serious. You made me a joke. I interrupted, voice low. And now you're learning what happens when the punchline stops funding the show. She blinked, visibly trying to muster more fire, but all that came out was, you're being cruel. No, I said, standing slowly. I'm being clear. For the first time. She looked to the door, to Sandra's voice somewhere in the kitchen, maybe hoping her mother would come rushing in to defend her. But no one came. She turned and left, slamming the front door so hard it rattled the frames on the wall. I sat back down, drained, not triumphant, not smug. Just empty. I'd spent years thinking love meant giving until you bled. That if I just paid one more bill, just showed up one more time, eventually they'd see me. Respect me. But respect doesn't come from sacrifice when it's invisible. It comes from boundaries. And this was my first real one. I didn't see Camille the rest of the day. Sandra avoided me. The house had become something colder, more honest. And I wasn't sorry. I knew it was only a matter of time before she came back. Camille had too much pride to apologize right away, but not enough resilience to survive on her own for long. So when I heard the heavy knock at my office door 2 days later, 3 taps, firm and rehearsed, I wasn't surprised. What caught me off guard was the silence that followed. No yelling, no whining, just stillness, like she wasn't sure what version of me would answer. I left the door closed a moment longer than necessary. Let it simmer. Then I opened it slowly, and there she was, standing with her arms crossed over a hoodie that clearly wasn't hers, eyes rimmed red. Not from crying, but from lack of sleep and whatever cocktail of frustration and discomfort she'd been drinking since her world started unraveling. Can I come in? She asked. Her voice was small. Too small for the girl who'd raised a glass to toast my bank account 4 nights earlier. I stepped aside and let her pass. She didn't sit until I pointed to the chair across from my desk. Even then, she perched on the edge like someone waiting to be dismissed. Look, she began, I get it. Okay, you're mad. You feel hurt. I was stupid. I waited. I said nothing. Her eyes flicked toward me, looking for some hint of forgiveness. She found none. I didn't mean it the way it sounded, she said. It was just a nickname. Something dumb we say in our group. I wasn't trying to disrespect you. No, I said finally. So calling me a cash cow in front of 40 people on your birthday, in a restaurant I paid for, was what? Endearment. It was a joke, she snapped. God, you're acting like I called you a thief or something. It wasn't the word, Camille, I said, leaning forward. It was the laughter. Yours. Your friends. Your mother's. It was how none of you stopped to wonder how that sounded coming out of your mouth. How it felt sitting in my chair, in my suit, after spending thousands of dollars just to make you feel celebrated. She looked away. I continued. I've never asked you to call me Dad. I've never demanded gratitude, but I've been there. More than your own father. More than most stepfathers would ever bother to be. She sniffed. I didn't ask you to do all that. And there it was. The knife slipped between the ribs with casual cruelty. She didn't say it to be mean, but because she believed it. That she was blameless in this story, that her comfort and entitlement came with no cost. No, I said, voice colder than I intended. You never asked. You just took. And I let you. That's on me. She flinched but held her ground. So what now? You just cut me off? Forever. I cut off the money, I said. Not the door. Whether that stays open depends on you. Her lip trembled. For a second, I thought the tears would finally come, the kind that strip away ego and reach something real. But she blinked them back, steeling herself. I've been couch surfing, she muttered. I can't get my stuff from the apartment without paying this guy. He's threatening to lock me out. That's unfortunate, I said. But that's what adulthood looks like when there's no one shielding you from the consequences. She laughed bitterly. So you're just going to watch me struggle? Seriously. I watched you humiliate me, I said, standing up. And now I'm watching you grow. It's not as entertaining, but it's necessary. She stood too, the chair scraping back. You don't get it. You'll never get it. You're not my dad. You're just a guy who paid for stuff and expected to be loved for it. Her words were meant to wound. They did, but not in the way she thought. What hurt wasn't the sentence, it was how familiar it felt. How often I'd said something similar to myself in darker moments. I had been just the guy who paid. And in that moment, I realized how fully I'd accepted that role, how long I'd waited for them to redefine it into something warmer, something real. But they never would. She was halfway to the door when I spoke again. Camille. She paused, her back still to me. When the money's gone and the comfort fades, you get to meet the real version of yourself. That's who you are now. Not the one who throws parties, but the one who cleans up after them. I hope you get to know her. She might actually be worth something. She didn't turn around. Just walked out, slamming the door behind her with a dull finality. Later that night, Sandra came in. She looked torn, holding her cardigan closed like armor, her voice flat. She's sleeping on someone's couch. She made her bed, I said without looking up from my book. She's still your daughter, she said. She's not, I replied, eyes on the page. And that's part of the problem. Sandra stood in the doorway a while longer, maybe waiting for me to soften. When I didn't, she said, I hope you realize this changes everything. I know, I said. That's the point. She left, and I heard the soft sound of her bedroom door clicking shut. Another silence settled over the house, deeper this time. Not just the absence of noise, but the absence of illusion. I went to bed in the guest room again, alone but strangely at peace. For the first time in years, I felt like I had stopped bleeding. Not healed, but not leaking energy into a vacuum of entitlement and denial. And that, for now, was enough. 3 weeks passed. The house grew quieter with each one. Not peaceful, just quieter, like a battlefield after the smoke has settled but the wreckage still smolders. I stayed in the guest room. Sandra stopped knocking. Our conversations, when they happened, were functional. Who's picking up groceries? What day is the house cleaner coming? Where the car keys were? That was all. No mention of Camille, though her name lingered between us like perfume from a party long gone. I knew she hadn't come home. Sandra never said it directly, but I could see the worry in her eyes, the way she kept her phone close even in the shower, the late-night text she tried to hide from me when the screen lit up her side of the bed. It was a quiet breaking, this slow collapse. We weren't fighting anymore, but something was splitting down the middle, cracks spreading in a marriage that had already been stretched too thin by years of pretending everything was fine. I don't know what I expected when I walked out of that dinner, but I didn't expect this. The eerie vacuum left behind when you finally stop carrying everyone else's weight and realize no one's rushing to pick it up. I'd stopped asking where Camille was. I didn't want to know. Maybe part of me feared I'd soften if I saw her sleeping in someone's basement or eating fast food with borrowed cash. Or maybe I was still angry, not fire and fury angry, but the deeper kind, the kind that lives in your bones and only shows itself when you remember a smile that wasn't real or a thank you that never came. Either way, I kept my distance. I kept my spine straight. I kept my wallet closed. One Thursday evening, I came home to find Sandra sitting at the dining table, a glass of wine untouched in front of her. She looked up when I walked in, eyes heavy. We need to talk. I sat across from her. I didn't say anything. She's not okay, she began, voice low. She's living with some guy who sleeps on a futon in a shared room. She hasn't eaten properly in days. I nodded slowly. She's resourceful. She'll figure it out. Sandra's jaw tightened. She's 21. She's 21, I repeated. That's old enough to buy alcohol, sign a lease, insult someone on a microphone in a restaurant. It's also old enough to learn what self-respect looks like, starting with respecting the people who feed you. She said she's sorry. No, I said. She said she's sorry she lost the benefits. That's not the same thing. Sandra stared at the wine glass like it might give her the words she couldn't find. You've always been hard on her. I've always expected better, I corrected. And I was stupid enough to think she might eventually meet me halfway. She's scared too. And I'm tired, Sandra. The words hung in the air. They landed harder than I meant them to, but I didn't take them back. I couldn't, because they were true. I was tired of being the mature one, the responsible one, the one who had to pretend that mockery and disrespect could be smoothed over with a Hallmark apology or a staged cry. Sandra's eyes welled up, but she blinked it away. I don't know how we got here. I looked around the room, the quiet kitchen, the untouched wine, the polished table set for no one. We got here because I stopped being afraid to ask what I was worth. You think this is about money? No, I said, calmer now. It's about value. And I've spent a decade giving mine away for free. She looked at me like I was slipping away in front of her. And maybe I was. Not because I didn't love her, but because love without boundaries turns into servitude. And I was done serving people who thought my sacrifice was expected, not appreciated. Later that night, I found her in the bedroom, packing a small bag. She wasn't leaving permanently, I knew that. But she needed space, or maybe she wanted me to ask her to stay. I didn't. I just watched. She asked if she could come here tomorrow, Sandra said without turning around. To talk to you. I didn't respond. She's going to say the words, she added. I made her promise. I walked away. The next day, Camille came. I heard the front door open. Her footsteps were cautious, like someone walking on glass. I was in the office again, pretending to read emails. She knocked, gently this time. No drama. No sarcasm. Can I come in? She asked. I looked at her, sweatpants, messy bun, dark circles under her eyes. This wasn't the girl from Instagram. This was someone cracked open. I nodded. She stepped inside. I'm sorry, she said before she even sat down. Not because I lost the money. Because I hurt you. Because I laughed when I should have thanked you. Because I made you feel like a joke in front of people who didn't know what you'd done for me. I was cruel. And I'm ashamed of it. It was quiet for a long time. Then I nodded once. Thank you. I'm not asking for anything, she added. I just wanted to say it. And for once, I believed her. She left quietly. And I sat alone, not triumphant, but still bruised. Forgiveness didn't come fast. Trust would take longer. But maybe, this was the first time she showed up not as a spoiled girl, but as a woman who'd faced herself. I still didn't open my wallet. But I opened the window. Let the breeze in. Weeks passed, and with each one, the dust settled a little more. Camille didn't move back in. She didn't ask to. She stayed with the same boy, the one with the futon and the dim apartment, though I suspected even she knew it wasn't built to last. But she got a job at a juice bar on the west side. Sandra told me in a quiet voice one morning while pouring coffee, like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to share. I didn't ask for details. I just nodded. Part of me was relieved, the other part wary, still holding the weight of every eye roll, every sarcastic thank you, every private humiliation I had swallowed for years under the label of family. Sandra came back home, though it wasn't as simple as putting her suitcase in the closet. Something between us had changed, fractured into smaller pieces. We slept in the same bed again, but there was a space between us now, a quiet, mutual distance. She didn't reach for my hand in the mornings. I didn't ask how her day was. We shared silence more than conversation. Sometimes silence is the language of people who have run out of excuses. One night, as the rain tapped lightly on the windows, Sandra sat beside me on the couch. We were watching something neither of us was really paying attention to, some show with too much laughter and too little truth. During a commercial break, she spoke without looking at me. She's trying, she said. I think it finally sunk in. I didn't answer right away. I let the silence breathe. She had to hit bottom, I said eventually. Sometimes that's the only teacher life gives us. She told me she wants to earn your trust again. Good, I said. Let her. I felt her eyes on me, searching for warmth, for softness, for the man who used to bend backward to keep peace in a house that hadn't valued it. But I wasn't bending anymore. I wasn't angry, not anymore. I was just done being the only one sacrificing in the name of unity. Camille came by once more. Not for help, just to return a few things, her house key, a pair of earrings she borrowed and never wore, a hoodie that had somehow made its way into her collection. She handed them to me wordlessly, and I took them. She didn't cry. She didn't make a speech. She just said, I know I have a long way to go, and I nodded. You do, I replied. But you've started. That's more than most people ever do. She blinked, surprised maybe by my gentleness, or maybe by how I didn't invite her in. We stood there for a moment, strangers who used to pretend to be family, and now maybe had a chance to become something real. Not through obligation, not through guilt or gifts, but through hard truth and the long road of repair. She left without hugging me, and that felt right. Affection needed to be rebuilt, not faked. The following week, I went into my office and opened the folder labeled Family Expenses. It was a digital graveyard of past payments, tuition receipts, utility statements, insurance policies I'd taken out for Camille's benefit. I deleted most of it, not out of bitterness, but because I was finally ready to live in the present. I was no longer her safety net. I was no longer the ghost benefactor keeping her lifestyle afloat. I was just a man, tired but awake, finally free of the illusion that generosity alone could win love. Sandra still hoped for more. I could see it in her eyes, the way she asked if I wanted to join them for dinner when Camille invited her out. I declined, politely, not because I held a grudge, but because I needed space. Healing doesn't come from pretending the wounds were shallow. It comes from acknowledging how deep they were and choosing not to reopen them. People love to say that families are forever, that blood, or proximity, or marriage should be enough to bind people together. But I've learned that families aren't built by DNA or dinner parties. They're built by respect, mutual effort, real apologies, not just convenient ones. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is draw a line and say, this is where I end, and where you have to begin on your own. I didn't cut Camille off because I stopped caring. I did it because I cared too much for too long without being seen. And I won't apologize for that. Now, I go about my days differently. I wake up and read the news in peace. I listen to jazz in the evenings instead of muffled arguments. I say no more easily. I give, but not blindly. I love, but not at the cost of myself. Camille sends the occasional text now, small things. Updates. No requests. Just effort. I don't always respond right away. That's not to punish her. That's just how rebuilding works. Slowly. Deliberately. On equal footing. And as for Sandra, we're still navigating. Love isn't linear. We have good days, quiet ones. We have awkward dinners and tentative smiles. But we're no longer hiding. That counts for something. I'll never be Mr. Cash Cow again. That title is dead, buried under years of resentment and one perfectly timed joke that tore the curtain down. Now, I'm just me. A man who gave, who got burned, and who chose, finally, to choose himself. And I don't regret it. Not even a little. If this story moved you or made you reflect on your own boundaries, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more real-life dramas told from the heart. Your support helps bring these powerful stories to life, and we'd love to hear your thoughts or similar experiences in the comments below. See you soon in the next story.